Hey, what's up, dude?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, I snuck in here and started a little bit before you, so we're
I
we're having
got
the fun.
stuck with these little punks.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing to get stuck with.
This one was on my leg and wouldn't let go for a while, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden did. So,
yeah, you're stuck. See,
uh,
and the way you get unstuck is you fire up FaceTime and then they scurry, right? Like, because they don't want to be on camera.
yep.
So yeah, I got started kind of talking about a few things. One of them was, what being stuck is, and also the three parts about getting unstuck, which we'll do another video on because I want to deep dive into those. But one of the big areas that I was saying is like a lot of people get into this whole like hyper action taking mode. And the problem with that is that's
hmm
only part of the thing. Like if you don't know where you're at and you don't know where you want to go and you don't know what the first step is, you're going to stay stuck. You need all
hmm
three to get where you want to go. So that's where I got for
Yeah.
Dean, just to catch you up. But yeah, so it's interesting because I had a call with someone last night who reached out to me about getting unstuck, and they said, "Look, I need another set of eyes," and I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting," and I'll tell you off camera who that was. You'll get a good chuckle. But long story
Yeah.
short,
Cool.
like it's a lot of people don't realize that they're stuck and they're looking at it kind of backwards. And so I think that's one thing that, with the trainings we've got coming up over the next couple of days, I want to talk about a lot about is what's being stuck really is, which is like today, and what it's not.
Yeah.
Because like one of the things that, I've been noticing a lot is, and you see this in the, I mentioned this a second ago, see this in the business community, right? Where people are like, go take action, massive action, work, 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 hustle, hustle, grind, grind, whatever, that whole archetype. And if you ever look, funny story, the success rate doing that,
So
one in a
low.
hundred, one in a hundred maybe that can do that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean,
Totally.
and even look at us, like even when we've tried to do that, and we know a lot and been in business a long time, and has that ever worked for us in 2.5 years of working together? Like I don't think that's ever worked for us.
No.
Like busting, one of us will be hustling, and then the other one won't, and then it's like it never gets synced up because there's something stuck there, right? Like
Yeah.
which is that it's a horrible model to be hustling and grinding all the time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
another story for another day, but. Yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to go with this. Is just really see like what your thoughts were on being stuck. Because I've been talking for a couple minutes,
Actually,
so change it up.
honestly, it's more of your thoughts. Like, you're the master of getting unstuck. I remember when we first started working together, pretty much 2 years ago. You helped me get like totally unstuck with which is kind of my limited thinking. Do you remember how we would be up till like I'd be up till like 3 a.m. talking, which is 6 a.m. your time,
Yep, I remember
and
that call.
we'd just be talking about things like getting into the like resistance and I don't know how far you want to get into this type of stuff, but I actually had no idea that I was even stuck. I
Right,
was very much logical thinking. You just follow the things that you were taught, and you should be golden. There was like no expansion whatsoever of my mindset at all, because I just thought I had everything figured out. Very logical. I've learned my sales. I learned my marketing. Why, if things not working, why am I feeling this way? Why am I like not able to get to the next level? And like
right,
literally 2 years ago, after those like 3 a.m. conversations where we were talking like for 3 hours, I realized that, all of the like the hustle and grinding, all of the marketing, all of the things that you learn that's just very, surface level is 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 not, you're not gonna, it's like you have that rubber band. It's the rubber band effect. You'll go as far as you possibly can, but if you, hey Wyatt, how's it going, man? Wyatt says he's working on getting unstuck right now.
yep,
Um, it's like that rubber band effect. You're gonna just boom snap back every time because you're not able to expand. You have to actually expand that rubber band, and you taught me how to do that. I mean, just one of the things was like actually feeling into the resistance and stuff that you
Mhm.
have, and a couple of other things that I never would have learned had it not been for you. So I'd actually rather hear, like, how do you even know from you, like, how do you even know when you're stuck, you
Well,
know?
and I briefly mentioned this, and I guess we'll go into this more today because I think it's actually a really great, like, to give people like something to
Yeah.
build a base on. So the
Yeah.
fact is,
And guys, we have some like really cool stuff coming up too. If you like this video, like click the like button. You'll actually be notified later on really soon, where we're gonna go even deeper into this type of stuff. So if you like it, we'll actually put a little message in the video that'll goes to some free training that we're gonna be doing on this as well, because it's super, super important. All right.
yeah,
So
well, and it's the big thing, right? Because you can't get where you want to go, whether it's business or family stuff. It doesn't matter. Like this stuff applies across the board, which is why I love helping people with it because people usually can achieve what they want once they're unstuck and in flow again. So the big thing with being unstuck is like paying attention to all the feelings that we hate, and this is one of the reasons why people stay stuck for so long is because they don't want to feel things they don't like. I mean, we're humans, we all do it, right? I do it, you
yeah.
do it, we all do it, right? And
Yep.
so the big thing is like all the stuff that sucks, especially in Western culture,
Hmm.
is people don't see negative things as growth opportunities. They see them as something to avoid, right? Like I want to
Yeah.
avoid
Yeah.
making mistakes. I want to avoid like feeling sick, or I want to avoid being angry. Like that's a big one. Like people bottle up their anger and sadness and things like that. And those are
Yeah.
actually just signals, right? Like you're stuck about something. Like if you're
Hmm.
sad, all it is a reaction to you thought one thing and something else occurred, and therefore you're sad. Like, if
Yeah.
someone passes away, well, everyone's going to be sad about that because you don't want your loved ones to not be here anymore, right? I mean, there's
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's but where people get stuck is not feeling that, like expressing that feeling, and it's not like all woo woo stuff either. I mean, it's actual physical,
Yeah.
like they've studied this in physics and things like that in the body and biology and whatever. But the big thing, and this is the baseline thing that I want to share with people, and this is the first thing I do whenever I audit, and someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm stuck with a funnel, or I'm stuck with this, or I'm stuck with whatever," is where are you at now? So obviously you feel stuck with your funnel. Like we'll just use that as an example, right? Because that happened yesterday. Where do you want to go? I want the funnel to do X, Y, or Z, right? I want to make this much money, or I want to sell this many customers, or whatever the case may be. And then the third question, and this is the big one, and this is the part where all the rah hocus pocusry stuff doesn't work, and it actually makes you more stuck than getting you unstuck by taking action. Is what's
Hmm.
the first step? And
Yep.
I mean, this is what I do. Actually, believe it or not, this is a damaging admission. So just so you know, I still go through this myself all the time because we're constantly pushing into new
For
domains.
sure.
And you did this with me. What was it, yesterday? Like even mentioning
Hmm.
like, hey, I need
Hmm.
you to do this and this, and like all of a sudden it was like it was weird. It was so easy to do because in that area I was stuck because like I couldn't see what I couldn't see because that's not my strong suit with what we were
Yep.
dealing with yesterday in the business. And you're like, I need you to do blank and blank, and that was like my first step. Like I knew what I wanted to achieve. The business grows, it's fun,
Hmm.
and have a lot of time. I knew where we were at on that topic. We weren't
Hmm.
where we wanted to be. And then
Hmm.
like you were like ding ding. And that's all it was to like open up that thing and then to progress again, right? So like I actually
But,
didn't have to come up with my first step. You did that for me, which is the key
yeah,
point I'm trying to make, is that first step is the
but
key.
totally. But like the cool thing is that the only reason you took, that you actually took what I said and did it is, and you didn't get butthurt, because I was pretty mean, like not mean, but I was pretty direct. And I need you to do this, is because you had already had the tools. You already had the tools to know that, okay,
Yeah.
even though this hurts my ego, this hurts me, there is, I know that I know how to transfer that hurt into, and that hurt is meant to teach or to do something that is trying to expand what you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to go like really back into the very, very like total fundamentals of this type of
Mm-hmm.
this stuff that is like so mind blowing and has helped me so much in the last 2 years that, I honestly credit you with saving my life, because of how powerful this stuff is. Because you and I know how bad things were 2 years ago.
Right.
It was really really bad. And on the surface, I looked great, but deep down, it was horrid.
Right.
Um, but so all that being said, like getting back, so some people like don't even know. I know for me, I didn't even know really that I was stuck. I thought I was just not doing the right things. I wasn't doing um, you know, certain sales stuff. I wasn't doing certain marketing stuff and everything like that. I knew that I was feeling really, really bad, and I was ignoring those feelings. I would, sedate with alcohol or whatever it was. Um, like when people, just for me, there was that deep feeling of, I know I could do more. I know there was like, it was just this unsettling feeling. Like, what do you do in that circumstance where you're not sure like what the thing is, but you know that something's wrong?
Well, okay, so that really is it. Okay, so the first thing, and this is a critical step for people to take, like, and it's more of an emotional decision type of step. It's not really tangible. Is where you are is just where you are, right?
Mm,
The story is the problem. It's not actually your circumstances that are wrong, because you're alive, you're breathing, there's hopefully food in your belly, like your
mm,
biological survival is met. But our brains create stories, usually to protect us, but oftentimes to keep us stuck, because taking a risk is
mm,
dangerous and whatever. Is
yep.
acknowledging that you feel that way. So like you feel bad about XYZ because of a story in your mind. Like there's a disconnect
Yeah.
between this is what I see, observe, like evidence. This is what I expect, and I might not be able to like put it into words. I just know it's not. Most of us do this by saying,
Hmm.
I don't know what I want, but I know I don't want this. Okay. And that's
Correct.
actually
Yeah.
the root, that's a symptom of the problem, which is that you have a story in your mind. Maybe it's conditioning, oh, I went to medical school, I did everything right, and I'm not making the money I want to make, and my parents told me to do this way, and I never actually did the things that I wanted to do. You hear this a lot when people go through
Hmm.
circumstances like that, is they are stuck because they have a story that they're not acknowledging. So
Yep.
you have to acknowledge, like I remember actually when you called me, it was October. This will be over 3 years.
Actually, 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
in October it'll be 3 years. It was right after my birthday, 30th birthday. And it was one of those things where there's just this expectation. You can't necessarily put your finger on it, but this is where like people who are in social media a lot, they get depressed. Like the amount of depression in people who are like on
Mm,
Twitter and Facebook is way higher than people who aren't, because they're constantly
hmm.
having this projection of what they should do rather than what they actually, hey, this is what I want my life to be. Like I'm the
Hmm.
one who wants this, right? But I don't want, fancy cars. But if I see everyone with fancy cars, my, Toyota Camry is going to look like a piece of junk relative to that. When in
Yeah.
reality, it's not. It's just a car. It just is, right? So
Hmm.
that's the first thing, is where you are today is just where you are. Okay. And what happens is when you look at this and you really get clear on this, you'll see that there's a separation between the facts and the story.
Yeah.
And the story is what causes pain,
Hmm.
is the disconnect from the facts, which are like, I am 6 feet tall, I have this color hair, I live in this
Hmm.
location. Those are facts, and they can theoretically be changed, but we'll just not get into that. Like that's just what you are. Okay.
Hmm.
But if you have this expectation of like, oh well, I'm 45 and I should have this and this, and I should have this much in my 401k or this much in my
Hmm.
business, and you don't, no matter
There's that.
what you actually have, you're going to see it as like, I don't have this, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
actually keeps you stuck. That's the curse. That's the
Hmm.
invisible curse, and I would say this is how the devil deceives us, if I'm being really honest, and it doesn't matter if anyone's religious or not. That's what I believe it is it's that deception of
Hmm.
like, because if it's not this, and this is where, you see, if you've ever heard of like the story of keeping up with the Joneses, right?
Yes.
Like
Yep.
the
Yep.
Joneses are the devil, but without saying that, like that's the thing, because you'll always be chasing something. You'll be chasing
Yep.
someone else's life.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, is just acknowledging the difference between this is where I am and this is the story, facts versus story. And this is hard because logic tells us, well, I need to do more of this. And then like logic is actually logic is fuel for a fire. It's not fuel. It's not a fire in and of itself. The heart is the fire. The logic is the fuel. So if you're dumb, like you're not very like smart as a person, but you have a big heart, you'll do more than the guy who's really smart but is disconnected from his heart energy. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like
No,
you'll
for sure.
you
For sure.
like you won't have like we're created as like spiritual beings that have a brain. We're not brains with spirits. It's
Yeah.
not the way it works. So
Yeah.
that's the first step. Now, when you actually say, okay, great, Brad, I know that now. I can see where I do that. What do I do now? And this is where this is the audit that I put people through. And it's the very first step. Once I know they're willing, able, and they decide that they want to change, because that's the key decision. You have to want to change, is here's where I'm at. Here's where I want to be. That's where most of personal development talks about. Like
Yeah.
all the secret, people have probably heard of The Secret, or, visualizations, manifestations,
Yeah.
blah,
I
blah,
mean,
blah.
and that's the, yeah, and it's been numerous
Right.
other ones.
That's this. Those are those two things, right? It's only two parts. It's like, have you ever tried sitting on the two-legged chair? It doesn't really work that well. But you put a third leg and it's a lot more stable, right? And the third leg
Yep.
is,
Yep.
what's the first step? Because you can say, hey, I don't I actually did this morning just to practice and see what would come up, because I wanted to get in the mood for this call. I was like, I want to build a real estate portfolio of a certain amount of money, like certain amount of assets. Like I don't, just that's in my brain. Like I have a vision and I know what that'll do. And that's where I want to be. Right now, I don't own any investment real estate yet. That's my current situation. So those are the two things there. Now, if all I ever did was focus on those two things, and believe me, I've done this, so I know what this feels like very acutely over the last 10 years on this subject. I never took a first step, which is the third thing, which is what's the first step? And that might not be looking at houses. It might actually be something like reading a book on like what does it mean to be a landlord. Like I'm just as an example. I don't know if that's actually the right
Oh
first
yeah,
step for
or
somebody,
even
but
like yeah, or even understanding numbers, like what's IRR, what's cash, cash on cash return, what's this and this. Like if you don't know that stuff, like I don't know how to. I like like I when if I don't know how to do that stuff, then it's going to put me at a disadvantage, or I'm not even going to be able to get to the next step. But the fact is right now, I don't know that stuff. That might that might be the first step. Is what is the first step in my learning all the numbers?
Yeah, or finding something like it might be even like I need to go find a book or a mentor that already knows those numbers and tells me what is the things that I do need to know. Because this is why struggling and just like hustling and working hard doesn't make sense, because it's like you oftentimes people who hustle and they're working, they never actually sit down and decide what the right first step is. So they'll make 10 moves, and it's like rocking in a rocking chair. Yeah, I'm rocking, I'm moving, but you got nowhere. So it was a waste of time. And you actually, of all the people that I know in my life, you actually, with the stuff that I'm weak at, this is actually where you actually help me give a great perspective. I call it the rocking chair test. Like when I run ideas by you, I know for a fact. I've actually, I haven't told you this actually, where this is the first time you're hearing this, but I actually run a lot of things by you to see if I'm in a rocking chair or if I'm actually taking the right first step. Because usually you'll say, dude, that's stupid. Why don't you do this instead? And then I'm like, okay, I was in a rocking chair. This is what I needed to be. But you actually do that for me because you don't know everything else that's in my head. You're just knowing what I'm telling you. You could cut through the BS stories, which is, I mean, we all do this, right, as people. So this is the thing. It's the first step.
Like it's crazy that you're bringing that up. Yeah, it's it's so cool hearing you say this stuff, because I mean I'm thinking back to 3 years ago. Gosh, I can't even believe it's been 3 years.
I know, right?
Is like a lot of the pain that I was feeling were stories, like stories of and seeing the pain that I was feeling as something I continually just needed to either avoid, or that's just life, or that's just
Bury it.
whatever. It was, yeah, bury it. Even when I didn't think I was burying it, I was burying it. Like, for example, I grew up in a when I was younger, I had some abusive childhood things when I was younger, and it was just mentally, I'm like, yeah, that that messes someone up, obviously.
Totally.
Just logically, it messes up. Like, and so, like, but thinking, like, what I would do is I would logically say, oh yeah, I've dealt with whatever it might be,
Mm-hmm.
and not actually feel into it and feel like what the feelings are as those are, and what story I'm telling myself. Oh, I'm better than that, or I'm this, or I'm never going to be that way, or I'm never going to do because of that I'm this way, or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
the story, I couldn't believe how much this story's affected, and it actually affected my business, it affected my family, all that other stuff. And
Right.
so, all that being said, when you showed me, like, would you say that even a first step could be just recognizing that you have stories that you're telling yourself,
Exactly.
and
That is
just
the first step.
realizing that?
You can't do anything until
Mm-hmm.
you you understand, and the thing is, you're not taught this in school. You're not taught this even in like a lot, like the way most people's like religious training doesn't teach them this. Most personal development doesn't tell you
That's
this,
totally
because
true.
if you are told this and you know that there's a difference, it's harder to sell you, right? Because I can't sell you the
Mm-hmm.
dream if you know that it's a dream. But if I sell you, if I
Mm-hmm.
sell you like, oh, big house, beautiful wife, fancy car, couple kids on the beach, like that archetype that you hear talked about in the business world, if I
Yes.
sell you that as fact, that you see me as
Yep.
this, rather than that's a story, because maybe you don't even want that. I don't want to live on a beach, frankly. I mean, especially here in Florida, like the hurricane premiums are through the roof, and you got to like leave your house every time you get like even a bluster, that sucks. Like, I don't want to do
Yep.
that. I mean, it's bad enough here in Orlando, and I'm an hour from the water. So, I
Yeah.
don't want to live on the beach. Now, if I lived in San Diego or La Jolla or someplace out there, I'm sure it would be a different story, because I don't think you guys get any kind of those types of storms. But like, you notice the difference,
Nope.
right? Like how big of a deal is that when that's a common story that's told in the world? Like, hey, look at me, I got my nice car. Like, I don't like supercars. Like, for example, I don't want in my
Mm-hmm.
life, like if someone gave me a Lamborghini, I'd sell the damn thing and go take the money and buy something else. Like, there's a
Go.
lot of there's like a million cars
You
I'd
could
rather
buy
buy it
you
for.
could buy like with a Lamborghini you could buy like 8 houses.
Exactly, and then you're retired, right? Because they're going to spit out cash flow forever. Or I'd buy my
Yeah.
tricked out like Honda Odyssey with the DVDs that come out of the ceiling and all that other good stuff. You see those where they have like the DVD that comes out of the roof, and
Totally.
anyway, it's like a home
Totally.
theater in the car. But all jokes aside, like that's the big thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that resistance to facts versus story
Mm-hmm.
is huge, because guess what? That's taking control of your mind. And it's not making
Mm-hmm.
yourself wrong. There's no judgment here, right? It's not judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Stories are there to inspire you. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why movies impact us way more than reading a book. It's the way the brain works. And I'm
Yep.
not going to get into that today, but like, movies get us at such a much more primal level, and same with stories.
Yeah.
So like, for example, you brought up, having a rough childhood. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not worthy." So I call it the shoulda, woulda, coulda disease, right? I should have done this. I
Yep.
would have done that. If I'd only known this, I would have done that. I should have done this. I could have done that. Why did this happen to me? It doesn't
Yep.
matter, right? That's a
Yep.
rocking chair feeling. You're rocking like it did. And the thing is, when you separate this, here's what's fun. When you separate the two, facts and stories, you realize that stories are fuel to change your facts.
Yes. Yeah,
And
for sure.
I'm gonna link to something, because there's something that I gotta find this podcast episode that this other gentleman shared, and he had this one idea that I liked, and it was really just using your past as fuel. And I remember when I
Mm.
first learned this a couple years ago, because even I'm constantly trying to get better at this, and I'm always looking around for better tools. And this one idea of deciding what of your past to keep as fuel was huge for me. And it's the
Mhm.
same thing, because as soon as you see your stories as fuel, life is so different,
Yeah.
because then it's like, look, you can do this. You are uniquely qualified to do this. Like, even when people feel like, oh, I'm not a leader, or I'm not a great public speaker, that's a story. There's no objective way to say if you're good or bad at public speaking. Now, you
Yeah.
might say, I'm new at public speaking. That might be a fact. But to say
Mhm.
that you're good or bad at public speaking is so subjective, it's almost not even worth paying
Yeah,
attention to,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Like, like it might be a fact that when I get on camera, I'm having fun. Like, I enjoy doing these Facebook Lives. I enjoy
Mhm.
talking to people. That's my personality.
Yeah.
Now, that is an objective fact. I do feel fun and I'm having a good time, And so for me, that's where I know what I feel like, and I say, how do I, what's the first step to doing more of this so I have more fun?
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. And that's the key thing: is where you are is a fact. Where you want to go really is a story, but we'll call it a future fact, to keep it
Yeah.
simple. And then what's the first step? And
Yeah.
that first step is the key. That's the key tipping point, because there's a formula that I'll share in another video. But basically, anytime you only focus on where you are and where you want to go, you're never going to
Yeah.
get anywhere, because the resistance will always beat those two things. Resistance cannot, by definition, beat when you have a first step and you throw that in there. Because
Mhm.
then what happens, you take that first step, and it might be a micro step. It might be going to Barnes and Noble and buying your first real estate investing book. I mean, that it could be
Yeah.
something that's sticking the key in the ignition. Okay,
Yeah.
back it out of the driveway, go down the
Yep.
road, plug the GPS in, blah, blah, blah. And what happens is that first step, however small, is your current situation and your future dreams are so
Mhm.
big and powerful. But if you don't
Yeah.
take that first step, it's like
Yeah.
multiplication by zero. It's still zero.
No, it's you can. I'll give you an example of how powerful this is, because it's a constant process. I'm going to share with you guys how I was able to get $47,000 just with this one thing that he's teaching right now.
Ooh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you like
Oh
that?
yeah.
Good copy,
Yeah,
good
good
marketing.
copy, good headline. You hooked me in. I want to watch you.
Yeah, no, it totally. So 47,000, and so one of the stories that I was telling myself. So I'll try and make it short, but I had some real estate deals that we were doing some really creative type of financing where we could, because we were using hard money loans, we were using private loans. We were able to use those loans in a way where we could get equity out of the houses quickly, and then use that money to buy more houses, or to just get reimbursed, so that the houses were actually cheaper,
Ooh,
cash flow, as far as not cheaper in the sense of sale price. The sale price was actually more expensive, but you didn't have to outlay much cash. So
right, right.
$47,000
That's cool.
it was a reimbursement that I was supposed to get back in April. And one of the stories that I was so one of the stories I was telling myself was, I don't know too much about real estate. I don't know too much about financing and things like that. So I'm going to leave it up to the guy who's helping me. You and I both know who this is.
Yep, yep.
Um, and what happened was, after I signed the documents in April, I was supposed to get a reimbursement of 47,000. Actually, anyway, I was supposed to get a reimbursement of 47,000 by doing this equity play with the houses, and it didn't come in April. It was
Ooh,
uh, it was it was the guy that you know, and then another guy that was involved, and the other guy that was actually, both of them were kind of like, yeah, checks in the mail, checks in the mail. It's coming. Hold on, you're gonna get it next week. It's gonna come next week. It's gonna come next week, and so on and so forth. Well, next week turned into the end of June, so here I
whoa.
am. Yeah, and here I am. I'm like, my cash reserves just in general are getting lower than I'm used to, like lower than
Right.
I'm like comfortable with.
Sure.
And so I kept on telling myself the story also of that I don't want to rock the boat. Like, if I rock the boat, then I'm going to not be able to do further deals with these guys, and it was just a really convoluted way of thinking when I look back on it or whatever. But it's
Right.
what it was. It was what it was. That's what the
Right.
story was. I'm not as good at real estate. I'm not gonna get as many deals like this. I'm not gonna get much business because he also gives me some business. Um, and so, long story short, I actually felt into. I started looking at that story I was telling to myself, and like really felt into it, and I was basically doing some of the tools that that you taught me, which we'll probably get into in later videos. Um, but so I'm looking at the story, and I'm basically just writing out in my journal just my feelings on what that story is and seeing if that story is actually true. What evidence do I have that that story is true? What's the other guy's story? Like putting myself into his shoes, seeing what his
Right.
story would be. Does that seem like it's true, and all this other stuff. And when it came down to it, people pleaser Dean, which that's another story that I have, um,
I don't
basically
like
was
that Dean.
like,
I don't like that
I
Dean, by the
don't
way.
know, me
I don't
neither,
like people
me
pleasing
neither.
Dean.
So people pleaser Dean general looked at all the stories and basically was like, no, the fact is he said that he owed me, that he was going to give me back this money in April. I'm seeing this guy tomorrow in person. I go and see him that day. He asks, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" He actually asked in text beforehand, "How's it going?" And I, rather than lying and saying, "Oh, yeah, things are good, man, things are great, whatever," I'm like, "I'm really stressed out because I don't have the money that you promised, and it's stressing out my family." And I just said it like it is. So then when I
Right.
saw him the next day, I go sit right across face to face with him, and he's like, oh yeah, the money, yeah, you're gonna need to call this guy over here, and you're gonna need to do this, you're gonna need to do that, and yada yada. And I said, and I just looked at him like, well, why do I need to do that? You're the one who set up this deal. Oh well, it's because of the way it looks and blah 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 and whatever, like optics, that he's telling me all this story. And I said, all right, well, why don't we call him together right now, like that? And I'm like, it,
Woo!
it's crazy.
This
Like,
is so not
I'm
like
like,
you,
and
man. I love
it's
this.
not like me, huh?
No,
But
no,
but
no. I'm like,
because
I'm spellbound. I'm like, man, dude,
isn't
man,
that
shoot,
because
like,
you know me really well. You know me. I'm tend to be very people pleasing, just in general, especially with people who are kind of more, I guess you would say, alpha male types. But I just looked at him. I was
Mhm.
like, well, why don't we call them both right now? And he looks at me and he's all, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, let's do that. And he texts the guy, says, he actually says, hey, I'm here with Dean, and he's asking for his reimbursement. Literally, no joke, 5 minutes later, the guy texts back and says, I'm going to wire it to him right now. He
You're
he
shitting
so
me,
the other
dude.
guy, I'm
Oh
not
my
shitting you, dude.
god! Oh my god! This is like a freaking
so
like. I need
so
a pre-sale video of this. We need to get you to tell this story. Like in a world
yeah.
where one man was waiting on a reimbursement,
it
one
was
text,
putting
one
it was
call,
putting
one
it
wire.
was it was putting a lot of, so one of the like stories I was telling myself too is that I'm a victim, like
Yep.
he's keeping this away from me, he's keeping me, I'm a victim, like I'm just waiting on him, when all I had to say was, let's call him together. And so he texts him, the guy says, I'm going to wire it, and then the other guy texts me the wiring instructions. Literally within an hour, I had $47,000 in my bank account in a reimbursement. He actually ended up sending me $100,000 accidentally, so I had to rewire a couple tens of thousands back to him. But the point was, the story I was telling myself was, I'm a victim. I don't
Right.
know real estate financing. If I rock the boat, I'm going to end up losing out on further deals. He's not going to be my friend anymore. All
Right.
these different stories that when I start looking at them, I'm like looking at it going, well, what are the evidence that this story is actually true? What is he feeling? Like, what is he doing? Do I think that he's
Right.
trying to screw me? No, not really. But he is screwing me, even though I don't think he's purposely doing it. He has all these other things that he's juggling or whatever. So
Right.
I need to do, my first step is confronting him and just saying, dude, let's both call this guy. And
Right.
literally that first step, that one step made me $47,000, or at
Got you
least
what you owed.
as my
Yeah.
own money. Yeah,
Right.
crazy.
Well,
Yeah,
that's wild, dude. Like I'm sitting here like spellbound. I'm like, man, like this is what I'm talking about. And it's funny you bring up, a couple of things that are important to realize. And this is, I'm glad you used the word that you used, um, uh, being a victim. Okay. One of the issues that a lot of people have is like the word victim has such a weird connotation in our culture today. But the reality is everyone's either you're either a victim or a victor, right?
yep,
And you really like that story is just a great example of the difference between the two, like objectively looking at, is he trying to screw me? Yes or no?
hmm
Probably
hmm
not. Okay, because most people aren't, unless they're a con man, most people aren't trying to screw anyone ever in their life, right? If it happens, it's an accident, or they made a mistake or something. There's always like a simpler explanation than someone trying to screw somebody, which doesn't happen very often compared to all the times things people do right by each other. Um,
yep,
a
yep.
lot,
Thanks, Ken. By the way, Ken said a great story. Thanks, man.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important because like being the victim is something that keeps people stuck, because if you're a victim, it gives you permission not to do a damn thing about it. Like that's what that means really. And at the end of the day, right, is if you're a victim, oh, life happens to me, not happens for me.
Yep.
Right. And we talk about this a lot, I mean, like the Bible is full of this, is like, I'm
hmm
here for you. Like I'm God's here for you. Everything that's happening is
Yep.
for your good at some level. And you might not understand it, but it is what it is. And so like in your case, I mean, and I've had similar feelings like that. I mean, a couple of my stories in that regard. I mean, they're not as
Yeah.
anywhere near as concise as yours. That's an incredible example. But that's something that I would really like feel into, because a lot of people, if you're operating from a victim stance, you'll always be stuck, because being a victim means that everything is happening to you, and you can't make a decision. Oh, because
hmm
like life happens to me, right? Like, oh, like
Yep.
this circumstance happened to me. Like, yes, it did happen to you, but how can you use it, which is a victor's mentality. And that's really the key. That's the first step of being unstuck, is deciding I'm going to be a victor of my own life. I'm going to win. Like I want to get somewhere,
Yep.
right? Because the other thing too, and this is something, going back to what you asked me a little bit ago about feeling unstuck, is a lot of people tell themselves they want things to avoid feeling the shit they don't want to feel. So like a lot of times people talk about money. That money is a great example. Like, oh, I want to make a lot of money. Well, why do you want to make a
Yeah.
lot of money? Because you don't want to feel poor, right? You're playing not to lose, not because
Yeah.
that money
Correct.
has a purpose, right? Because like money is just a tool, like a
hmm
hammer or a screwdriver or a car or something like that. They're not, the story is what we put on them, not actually what they do. It's just cash, or it's bits and bytes on a computer screen, because most money is electronic anyway. So
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's what the money's doing that you really want. But a lot of people, yeah, Betty says take ownership. Exactly. It's taking ownership
Yep.
of everything. Um,
Yep.
but that's one thing that is really important for people to realize, is that it's the story. So a lot of people say things that they don't want to feel something. I don't want to feel
Yeah.
stupid, so I won't take the risk. I won't ask the question because I don't want to feel stupid. But I
Yeah.
really want to. I really want to be an investor. But you won't say, I don't understand what this terminology means, because you don't want to look stupid to someone who does look it up. Or you'll be that
Yeah.
person who spends 8 hours doing research on Google when you could have just called somebody up and said, "Hey, what's this all about?" Oh yeah, just pay attention to this and this. Don't worry about all that other stuff. You most of the time you won't need that, and if you need it, you can look it up when you need it. So no big deal.
Yep.
Just focus on these two things, and then you do it in an hour. But most people would rather waste 7 hours researching endless stuff, and I'm guilty of this as charged, right? Like I did this all the time. Um, like I still do. I find myself doing it from time to time, where I'll spend
hmm
time researching rather than just going to talk to someone who does it. Like right before we called, I actually had a conversation for an hour with someone who's doing a lot of paid advertising to fill up their funnel, and they're at break even already. And so she was
Yeah.
walking me
Yeah.
through like what they do to get them to show up for their webinars, and where they get them to buy they have a training program that's an annual training program. So I just had her walk me through that, because I'm like, they're already doing it. They're like 6 months ahead of like, that area of our business. So I'm like, why would I go spend hours theorizing when I could just talk to someone for an hour and
Yeah.
then take what they're doing and modify it for our circumstances and then kind of build from there. So I don't know if
But
that
you
makes
have
any
the
sense.
tool, of recognizing the story,
Oh,
which
sure.
is so,
That's the
so
key point.
important.
That's the key point is
Like,
it's facts and
and most
stories.
people don't understand that facts and stories thing. And so kind of just to kind of wrap it up, like, you know, that, like, that I think to me that was probably the hardest thing for me because I
Hmm.
thought my stories were facts. Like,
Yep.
how can you, I mean, to kind of close it out, like, um, how can you like how like what's one way that people can actually start seeing, like, is their story real? Is this like, or if they even have story? Most people would say no, this is factual, this guy's a jerk, this guy's doing whatever or whatever, you know.
Right.
Like, how can people tell if they even are trapped in that and stuck in that loop that they keep putting themselves in
Well, I'll give
with
I'll
their
give
own
you
story?
I'll give you a simple example because it's great to start with elementary stuff because like when someone's like when you deal with like jerks or this kind of guy's trying to screw me or not screw me or the government's bad or
Hmm.
good or whatever or this candidate sucks versus this candidate, those are really complicated things to sort through because they're mostly stories that are projected onto people from who have an agenda of some kind. But we'll take something simple like I'm wearing a blue shirt. That is a fact. Okay. I have
Hmm.
blonde hair, which doesn't really show up right now because it's dark outside. I have black glasses. I have white skin. Okay. Those are facts. Now, if I'm telling myself I feel like shit today, or I feel ugly today, or I feel like, oh, I'm just like not really put together today, or something like that. This is a big one that everyone has in the morning when they're getting ready, if they have a job, especially, or if they're having to go
Hmm.
somewhere, right? That's a story because actually you don't know. Like that's just your own self telling yourself, and
Hmm.
you can't measure it. So, for example, if you can point to it, it's a little bit more closer to the fact. If it's something that you feel, it's
Hmm.
oftentimes a story, right? And so, like, without
Yeah.
getting into investigating feelings too much for today, anyway, it's separating the two between like, can you observe it? Can you point to it? Can you touch it? That's probably a
Hmm.
fact. But like, how do you point to someone being a jerk? Like, what is a jerk? My
Hmm.
definition is different than you. Like, does anyone have a standard definition? Oh, that's a jerk.
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
you
no,
know
it's
what
true
it is.
because,
But
like,
that's
well,
how I
yeah,
would
like,
do it.
well, like how, like, when you and I are pushing and pulling on each other, when I'm just like, Brad, that was dumb. Like, why didn't you just come and ask this? Or when you're like, Dean, duh, I'm way better at networking than you are. Uh, you should just come to me and ask. Or
Right.
if like we get mad at each other or whatever, I might sound like a jerk, but actually it feels good because I'm like, crap, I don't have to waste 10 hours anymore, you know?
Right. Well, and I think that's the big key, right? Like, is it's not all on you, and with your spouse. Like, I mean, Christina does this for me all the time. Like she doesn't know much about our business, the tactics of it anyway, but she gets the big idea, and she can say things to me where she's just like, "See, look, like that person, you thought that person didn't like you, and in reality, you just kept to your character, and like the facts were." You weren't going
Mm,
to change your behavior based on what they did. You did what you thought was right and you moved on one way or the other and you weren't tied to the outcome. And I'm like,
yeah.
man, like how is this girl like already know like what to freaking tell me? Like this is crazy. And that just happened last night. And I'll tell you that story privately just because that person
Yeah.
doesn't want me to share it. But it was
Yeah.
just to me. I'm like, what are the odds? And
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
so it's if the to keep it simple for people just for today, if you can point to it and touch it, it's probably closer to a fact. If it's something that you feel, or if it brings up any emotion, it's probably a story. If anything
And there's, yeah.
emotional is there, like family, bosses, your parents, your spouse, your kids, all those things are probably 90% story and 10% fact. Just
Yeah.
because they're like
And
hot buttons. If it's a hot button issue, it's probably all stories. If it's politics, it's all stories. If it's religion, it's most likely stories that people have. Like, oh, I was
mhm.
told this and you were told something different, and we fight because we have two stories battling. When did we actually even look at the facts of the situation, right? So
Mhm.
that's just the way to think of it. The more hot button something is, the more likely it is a story.
I love it. I love it.
Stuff. Yeah,
Oh, so good. This is so good. If you can't tell, I'm like super excited about this
dude,
type
it's
of
gonna be
stuff
fun.
because this is the stuff that brought. I mean, it doesn't seem like it affects your business. It doesn't seem like it affects like your profit and stuff. But this is stuff that it like saved my family. It like saved my marriage. Not that my marriage was like like on the verge of divorce or anything like that, but at least the happiness in the marriage and things like
Yeah.
that. You know, it's stuff that has increased my bottom line. It's stuff that, you know, it's the tools that, that you're going to be sharing over the next few days and into next week is just absolutely awesome. They're fantastic. So,
Well, it's like trying to
so
drive
if
a
you,
car without gas.
yeah. So if you guys like, wait, say that again. You kind of cut out a little bit.
Yeah, I know it's getting a little wonky. I don't know. The weather's kind of stinky here, so my Wi-Fi is weird. But all this stuff, trying to drive a car without gas, and that's the best way to
Yeah,
really think of
exactly.
it. Like, you know, you can't get anything
Exactly.
you want in life if you don't put gas in the car. You're never gonna get the car out of the driveway. You know?
Exactly. No, I love it. So yeah, if you guys like this, and if you guys are finding just a ton of value in this is stuff that is seriously life changing, and it affects every aspect of your business. If you like it, click like on the actual video here, and what will happen is as we're doing more and more videos like this, because we're going to go deeper into this next. I mean, talking about stories, but like, what do you do with the stories? Like, what do you like? How do you actually have, like, you need tools to, like, what tools are there to actually start expanding the way that you do things and so on. So like the video, and then what will happen is we'll let you know we're actually going to have a much more detailed a free deep dive training for this stuff as well. It's life changing. That's all I can say. And Brad, like, I totally thank you so much for not just being on here right now, but also I mean, totally changing my life 3 years ago, and I constantly use this stuff even today to just get better and better and better at my relationships, my business, and things like that. So yeah, I appreciate it. But yeah, close us out, dude. Close us out.
Yeah, man. So, well, it's fun. I mean, if you guys need any help with this, I mean, like, this is a passion of mine. Like, I'm really good at it, and it's you know, right now it might seem big, but the big takeaway for today and the homework, if you're still watching now, is start looking at the things that you feel like stuck on, and try to start separating as best as you can. This is what we've shared today, between facts and stories. And just recognize that, like, it's probably, if you can't figure out that it's a story, it's probably, that's a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of like diving into the matrix a little bit, but it really is simple, just understanding what stories, and not trying to get out of it. Like, just feel the fact that, like, some things are facts and some things are stories, and probably knowing the difference between the two, well, it almost like fixes itself once you recognize, like, most of the stories, especially in the beginning, once you recognize it is a story, you'll just be like, nah, I don't really believe that anymore, and then it's gone, right? Just like that, poof, gone. You know, so
True.
just do that for now, and yeah, and then show up for our next videos, because we're gonna have a lot of fun with this over the next little bit. So yeah, man.
Love it. I love it. All right, Academy. We'll see you in the next
Awesome.
video.
Well,
It's awesome stuff coming up. Awesome stuff coming up, and it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna be fantastic. So we'll see you in the next video. Appreciate you guys, and excited to have Brad back soon.
all right, bye guys.
See ya.